Can we talk? I don't know about you, but through this pandemic, these last few months, it's been extremely stressful. And I'll tell you, I think I've done a really good job of staying cool, calm, and collected. Well, most of the time anyway. But the other day, someone said something to me, and wow, it was like fire coming out of my ears. I went from 0 to 60 in a second. Have you ever overreacted like that? Where does that come from? And more importantly, how do you control it? That's what we're going to be talking about today in our podcast called Grace Under Fire. Hello and welcome to Dr. Joe's Health and Sanity Call. I'm Dr. Joe, a wellness expert and professional speaker who helps busy people stay healthy, sane, and productive. For more information of how I can help you and your organization, visit drjoe.com, drjo.com. To help us today in understanding what happens when we overreact, and more importantly, what we can do to calm it all down, we have with us Deb Cunningham. Deb Cunningham has a 20-year career in biotech, medical, marketing, and sales. But more importantly, she's had 20 years teaching yoga and mindfulness. The name of her company is the Mindfulness Effect, where she is a speaker and coach. So welcome, Deb.
Thank you. So glad to be here. Thanks.
Why does that happen? I'm sure I'm not the only one that's ever overreacted like that. But why? Why does that happen? It just happens like that.
It's something that kind of starts when we're kids, right? So we learn based on our community, our family, school, friends, wherever you are as a youngster, and what your environment is creates the way that you are going to respond. And, we sort of create these habituated patterns. The first time that happens to you, you're 5 years old on the playground and you're told you're dumb or stupid or fat or whatever, you learn how to cope with that and successfully get through whatever that situation is. So then the next time you're triggered, you go to that same pattern, and it's a habituated pattern that we will continue to use over and over and over again. And really it's because the brain just kind of goes into this panic that you're being challenged, you're in danger, you need to respond. So we're kind of doing this because that's the only way that we know how to do it. And that's our knee-jerk.
Well, or at least our youthful self, same way. That makes sense to me, because I remember my mom used to always say, when I was younger, I had really brilliant red hair, and she'd always say, well, Joanne, you will never have ulcers when you grow up. And I don't even think I knew what ulcers were. And she would say, because you know how to vocalize, you know how to get your opinions out. You're never going to have a problem with holding in. But you know what? Then you get into those years after, especially after college, where you have to kind of fit in with an environment that maybe isn't your kind of environment, because those first couple of jobs typically don't mesh with who you are, and you learn to zip up your mouth because you're going to get yourself into trouble. And so that makes sense. That inner self, that youthful self, is still within me. It still wants to voice myself, and obviously the other day it came out. Well, almost came out.
Right. You have those two sides. Either you're going to blurt something out. I'd offer that even that zipping it up can cause harm. So that's one of the things that we're going to talk about is...
Well, no, let's talk about that, because if I hadn't been able to walk away, I really think I probably would have destroyed that relationship.
Yeah.
But you're right, because I zipped it up. Hours later, I'm still fuming about it.
Right.
And my stomach was upset, but I'm guessing there's more going on, isn't there?
Yeah. And the problem with stewing about it is that you're having that same chemical reaction in the body all over again. We can all think of a time when you're in the shower and you're like, oh, I should have said this, I should have said that. And you're getting yourself all stirred up again. So you're doing that to yourself if we can learn how to move through that whole process in the moment and learn how to disconnect from it so that we're not reliving it over and over again.
Yeah. And And Deb, I like when you said we're doing it to ourselves.
Yeah.
So whenever I'm teaching stress management, I remind people, because they're all, I might be talking about what you could do, and they'll say, it isn't me, Joe. I mean, it's them. They're the ones that are doing it. And I'm like, yeah, first of all, we're not going to be able to change other people, but realize that no one can get in your head and turn things around and make you crazy. You're making yourself crazy.
Yeah.
So it's a
and I'd like to give you an example of, years ago when I was sort of learning my way around mindfulness and these techniques. I have a house full of 3 kids. I had twins, and then 2 years later had another little girl. So then fast forward, they're all teenagers. And as you might be able to relate, it's a house full of a lot of challenges. Yeah. And, they're really close in age. And I had those reactions similar to what you're saying almost on a daily basis. And, I don't think I'm scary mommy, but, you've got teenagers and hormones and all of this. Mm-hmm. And I felt like my job up to that point was, I've got to teach a lesson, and this is my habituated way. I've got to show them I'm right. I've got to show them I'm right. And so I was met with a trigger, and I'll never forget it. It was in the fall a few years ago, and something just kind of clicked, and I stopped. So I realized that I'm the key to changing the whole dynamic in the household. And lo and behold, the situation came around where we had a really, really good, strong dialogue, and I was able to have those teaching moments with my kids, but also not get all caught up in my sort of reactionary response of maybe screaming or stomping or slamming a door. And fast forward a couple weeks later, my husband actually said, you have been remarkably patient with the kids. The whole house feels differently. The dynamic is different. Conversations are great. The kids are a lot calmer. What's different? And we sort of backtracked. I had gone through all of this training and learning in the spring of that year. And that's sort of when I slowly built up my capacity to learn how to change my response. And it's a lot like a captain of a ship, right? So if the captain's freaking out, everyone on the boat is freaking out. If you're a captain and you're in the tumultuous, stormy waters, but you're calm, not only are you keeping the people on the boat calm, but you're able to access parts of your brain that are going to allow you to move through that crisis in a strategic, focused, clear thinking manner. And that's what we're dealing with in these moments.
Yeah. And another good point, Deb, because I think all of us can relate to that fact that we can't think clearly when we're stressed out.
Right.
I remember probably one of my most difficult stressors was 1994, and we lived in a home in Houston. And at that point, I hadn't heard about the floods that we hear about now all the time. But I remember water started creeping in the house, and it turned out that the creek that was a mile away, we didn't have social media back then, so we didn't hear about it. It had been drizzling outside, but I wasn't anticipating water coming in the house, and I'm thinking, that we got a puddle, a retention. Then I realized, no, it is coming down the street and into the house. And I remember like running around the house like a chicken without its head, just running around, not knowing what I should do first. Right. Oh, I got to call this person, and I don't remember their name. Let me move this, and I got to go over here, and like not getting anything done. And so I think all of us can kind of relate to a time where it was so stressful, we couldn't think clearly. So that's another good point. So first of all, if we can respond appropriately, it'll help our relationships. It'll help our own health, so we're not reliving all that. But thirdly, I think we're going to make better decisions when we're in a calmer state. So, okay, so how do we get there? How do we become more mindful of what's going on and take a different path?
So I think if you will bear with me, we'll do a little exercise here. So if you can, even if you want to close your eyes, do that, but we're going to think of a trigger and, picture that place, the time, the people involved, where are you, what's the setting, incorporate all the senses and spend just a second here really thinking about that moment. And odds are, if you're truly thinking about that, you might start feeling that chemical reaction in the body again that you felt in that moment. But here's where we're going to interrupt that. And it's kind of like a wave of response rather than a reaction. So I'll talk about these techniques, but we're going to be using them not necessarily in this order. They're just really important to focus on. Our first step in the first phase in this really is to pause. And whether that means you're physically withdrawing or you're just closing your eyes and withdrawing from the commentary in the mind, you absolutely have to take that first couple of seconds. Really, that's all we need, is to pause. The next part of the phase is to bring your focus to the breath. And that's the fastest way to get you out of that central nervous system freak out of fight or flight and put you into the parasympathetic nervous system of rest and relax, restore. So we're taking a big deep breath in and we're focusing on the breath. This still can happen in a matter of seconds. And then the wave continues, and we've got to find where in our body that we're holding on to this tension. So do you feel it in your stomach? Do you feel your throat closing up? Is your heart rate increasing? Are you starting to shake or tremor? So just acknowledging that, becoming aware of that. And then to the extent you can in the moment, relax those parts of the body. The breath can help you do that. It can help get the shoulders out of the ears, relaxing the heart rate. It can actually bring down the heart rate and the blood pressure. And then after we're sort of doing that body scan, where we're really maybe quickly running from the top of the head to the soles of the feet to release whatever tension we can have, we're just going to watch. And what I mean by that is you're just, okay, I still feel a little tightness in my stomach. I still feel a little bit shaky. We're not judging it. We're just watching it and becoming aware. And then you're going to kind of allow that experience to wash over you. So I feel really angry right now. My stomach's in knots. I'm just going to let it kind of move through me. And then it will likely, like a wave, it'll kind of come back down. And all of this sort of, this phase can happen in, like I said, a matter of 90 seconds, couple minutes. Pausing, focusing on the breath, relaxing and feeling the body, watching and allowing that to happen without judgment. So I wrote those words, those phases on a little Post-it note on my mirror. So it just sort of became habituated. Every time I would blow through my bedroom, I would kind of see that. And regardless of what hit me when I walked back out into the house or got in the car and drove, went to work, whatever it is, I had that visual in my head of even just that moment where I can take a second to stop the fight or flight part of my brain from being the captain of the ship, really.
And actually, I would say, well, first of all, pausing, as you mentioned, is the first step. And it probably is one of the most important things, because if you don't pause, then it's going to happen the way it always has. And if you don't like how it's always happened before, the only way to stop that is to do something different. I remember years back, I was in my first professional job. And I remember there was a supervisor who said something to me that this was before the Me Too thing, and it wasn't really a sexual comment. It was just a very inappropriate comment. And I was so stunned. So it wasn't like I was thinking, oh, I've got to pause and not say anything.
Right.
But I was so stunned that I think I went, and it lasted long enough that he actually took it back. And he said, well, I think I overreacted there. What it really meant was, and he changed the conversation. And I really appreciated the fact that I was able to pause, but it also proved to me that sometimes just stopping, not hitting back, but just stopping is sometimes the best way for people to kind of hear it again in their head and say, whoa, that didn't sound right.
Right.
And so.
And what's happening, I find this fascinating, and you know this, when we look at the brain and the science behind it, is when we're in that moment, the prefrontal cortex shuts down. It's like offline. And that's the executive function part of our brain. That's what helps us make clear, focused, calm decisions.
Right.
That's not working. So you're working from the back of the brain. It's that reptilian part that's just wanting to keep you alive, fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, that's
important
excellent.
to kind of bring that back online, reboot the prefrontal cortex, and then we can move forward from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that example. That's perfect.
And I wanted to bring up a couple other things that kind of tie into all this, because when I teach stress management and people say, it's really difficult for me to pause, he, she, it makes me so angry. And we talked about like the pause thing. So if it's something on the news, you can turn it off. If it's a person in the room, maybe you can walk away. If it's, and you mentioned even like closing your eyes, so you don't feel like you're there. I found out kind of through trial and error, and other people in the class were talking about this, that sometimes if you just shift your attention, so let's just say you are in a meeting where you can't just walk away, right? You can shift your attention. And some gal was sharing with me that what she likes to do, and we tried this out in the class, that instead of looking at their eyes of the person that just said that, to look at their nose.
Mm-hmm.
And we tested this out, getting closer and closer and closer before we could get closer. Seeing that unless you're like really face to face with that person, they can't tell that you're looking at their nose. Right. It still looks like you're giving them eye contact. But to look at their nose and actually look at it, noses are kind of interesting kind of things, and she was saying that sometimes you see the boogers going down and getting sucked back up, or looking at the nose hairs or the pores or the little pimples. Right. And I always remember that, because in reality, you can look anywhere on somebody's face. Right. And they will think you're still giving them eye contact when in fact you've kind of
that's like derailing that reaction. It's just like a body scan. It's sort of giving the brain something else to do than having that habituated freak out that you're prone to do. Not you, but us in general are prone to do.
Well, I would have to say that most of the time I know how to keep a cool, calm, and collect, but I'm hoping that you too, occasionally, it's not just me, that sometimes just things snap and.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, really now more than ever, we're all being really reactionary. And it's, you and I were talking the other day about how, it's really easy to get sucked into that rabbit hole right now for a lot of reasons, but we're a little bit isolated. Well, we're really isolated, and you just get in this bubble and sort of in this spiral of panic. And using these little techniques, one thing I want to point out is that any kind of mindfulness technique or breath work or anything that we're doing to take us out of that panic mode is actually continuing to do favors from a neurological standpoint moving forward. So if I access this little bit of mindfulness on a daily basis, then I'm actually growing my brain. I'm creating new pathways in my brain, much like going to the gym and working out. If you do it once, that's not really going to do you any good. You'll be sore for a few days. But if you do it every day, time and time again, then we learn new patterns. We learn new habituated ways of dealing with that. So it's an ongoing practice. And yeah, you're right. I've been doing this for years, and I still find myself, whatever that reaction is coming up, it's coming up, and I do my darndest, but it doesn't always happen.
Well, Dr. Rob Pennington, and one of the previous podcast calls, had said something about it's not like we get rid of these not so good behaviors. It's just that they don't happen as often and they don't last as long. And so no, don't expect like overnight success when you become more mindful. But if we can let it happen less and not happen as long, then we're on the right track. So.
And it's a little bit like, I love my analogies, but it's a little bit like a wild horse. If you've ever watched a horse being trained or even seen it in the movies, once that horse hits the stable, it's gone. It wants to run around. So each day you're training that horse to stay a little bit closer, and then it kind of doesn't leave the stable as much. And that's sort of what the brain is like, is we're creating a habit that allows the brain to come back to that place of mindfulness a little bit easier than it did yesterday, a little bit easier than it did a week ago. So it's a process.
I like that analogy. That's good. And even if you don't know about horses, even dogs, or, we're trying to train a dog.
Yeah, train the dog. So we're training the mind, much like we train the kids, the dogs, the horses.
And the kids too. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, wonderful. All right. So how can we find more information about you, Deb, and what you do?
Sure. Well, the Mindfulness Effect is my company. You can find that at www.themindfulnesseffect.com. And online there is all the information that you need about what we're doing, both from a group standpoint and personal one-on-one coaching sessions.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's Health and Sanity call, please subscribe to the channel and share it with others. For more information about how I can help you and your organization, visit drjo.com. That's just 4 letters, drjo.com. All right. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.